it's recommended that you spend between 5 to 10 hours preparing for any interview. In this video, I'm going to show you my 5-step process on how I prepare for any managerial interview within 2 hours. And I'm going to show you this with an actual example. Ideally, I'm going to have more time than that, but it's completely doable within 2 hours. This process also got me the job as head of country operations for a food delivery company, and I did only have 2 hours to prepare. I was at the mall when I got the actual invites. If you're wondering how my notes look like, stick around and I'll show you the actual example of the notes that I took when I was interviewing for a role of a COO, and I got the job. Now, let's go to step number 1. Step 1 is going to take me around 30 minutes. In this step, I'm going to understand who the company is, what is their vision, what are their goals, what is their mission statement, and what are their values, if they have any. The way I'm going to do this is that first, I'm going to check their company webpage or their LinkedIn webpage, whatever they have. Then I'm going to check any news about the company, either local or global. I'm also going to be writing things down. So the reason why I'm going to be writing these down is, one, that I'm going to be able to remember them better, and two, that I'm going to have the actual notes in front of me when I have the interview. Another way that I can also do this is just to copy and paste them in a Google Doc or a Word file. The two big issues behind this is that when I just copy pasting is that, one, I'm not going to be able to remember as much as if I were writing, and two is when I have the notes present during my interview, I'm either going to have them in the same screen as my interviewer or most likely in a different screen. And if I'm going to be looking at my notes somewhere else, it's going to look really strange. So I do recommend that you have a notebook and you write these things down. So step number 2 is I check how they run their operations. This is probably going to take me around 15 minutes, especially if I'm interviewing for an operations role. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check their industry first, especially if I haven't worked in the industry yet. Then I did a cost analysis for the whole company, and I broke it down to fixed and variable costs. Going through this exercise told me about how the majority of their operations are actually run. There's always going to be some nuances between every company and all of that, but that actually doesn't matter. And the company doesn't expect you to know all of these nuances. If you're in operations, you're going to be spending the majority of the company's money. So you really do need to know that. You cannot be clueless while coming into the interview for an operations role and not knowing anything about what their cost structure is, especially as a manager. You're going to fail miserably in the interview if you don't do that. So when I was preparing for the interview for the head of operations for Glovo, I actually didn't have that much to go with because they were actually really secretive about their cost structure, about everything. But I knew who their competitors were, and they were actually a lot more open. I found an interview with a courier that was actually explaining how they get paid. And reverse engineering that, it actually gave me a big insight about how the company's cost structure actually was. If I finish before my allotted 15 minutes are up, I'm also going to do the revenue side of the profit equation. When I only have 2 hours to prepare for the interview, I'm most likely never going to do the revenue side of the profit equation just because I'm not going to have enough time, and the revenue usually doesn't come up within the scope of the operations interview. So as you've been able to figure it out, I actually took 1 hour and 20 minutes to prepare for the first 2 steps, which are the key for a really good interview preparation, especially for an operations managerial role. So for step number 2, I really wished I would have had AI in 2021 because it would be so much easier for me to get the information all accumulated into one place. And because with the operations, I don't need to be as exact because nobody is expecting me to know everything and to be completely precise. Just using ChatGPT would be more than enough. Okay, so this really simple prompt pretty much gave me everything. So we can see global operations, platform model, 3-sided marketplace, customers, couriers, partners. That's exactly correct. And then I would just be looking service categories. Okay, amazing. This is what we already saw. Tech infrastructure, I wouldn't care about that. Then logistics, fleet of freelancers. Yes, that would be really important. Okay, delivery focus. And then cost structure here, courier costs. Yeah. So it says the largest expense. Absolutely true. So I would definitely be more interested, and I would actually want to deep dive into that. Then I would just be looking at operational costs, technology, all of that, and then monetization, revenue streams. So I didn't even ask it here, but it actually gave me the revenue side of the equation as well. But going down there, like unit economics, it's amazing. So revenue per order, it gives you exactly what they're doing. Service fee, yep. Merchants, awesome. But specifically for me, the cost per order here would be the most crucial one. So Courier costs, courier payout, usually 3 to 5 euros per delivery. Yep, exactly. And these are perfect depending on distance, time, and bonuses. Yep, includes performance-based. Absolutely. Operations cost, okay, amazing. Cost of resolving, marketing. So this part would be the most important for me, and I would go and deep dive even more into that. And key levers to improve unit economics. So I didn't even ask ChatGPT, but this part would definitely come into step 3, which is what would the challenges of my role be? And this would definitely be how to improve the unit economics, right? And yeah, so the majority of the things that I was looking at, we pretty much did within 2-3 minutes, and with just some simple prompts. So I put it here again. Can you give me a detailed cost breakdown of courier compensation? And what I did here was, yeah, base fee, distance-based fee, time-based incentives, yep, and optional, absolutely. Multi-order bonus, absolutely. This one is actually also optional. Drop-off fee, yeah. Incentives and bonuses, performance, referral, weekly guarantees, hourly guarantees in some markets, yep, absolutely. Courier costs out of their pockets. This is also would be really important for me to understand the business model, because what are the couriers paying out of their own pockets, and then average total earnings. It's actually spot on. So yeah, hourly earnings net, depending on the country, pretty much, but yeah. So pretty much that's it. Within 5 minutes, I was actually able to generate the whole step 2 and also part of step 3. What I would have is I would be deep diving a little bit more, and I would have more time for me just to prepare my notes, to understand it a little bit better. So then I move on to step number 3, which is going to take me around 15 minutes. And here is when I'm going to be thinking about what my actual role is going to be in this position. I'm pretty much going to be using the knowledge that I've gained in steps number 1 and 2. So when I'm doing step number 3, I usually don't give that much weight to the job description, just because usually it's poorly written and they just copy paste everything that they think of. With step number 3, I'm actually going to be determining 3 things. So 1 is, what is my business as usual? What my everyday is going to be like. 2, what are the challenges of this role? What's going to happen when I take over the role? What are some challenges that the industry as a whole has that I'm going to have to be focusing a lot of my time? And the third one that I'm going to be thinking about is how I tackle these challenges. I'm only going to have 15 minutes for this step, but it's going to be enough for me just to get the general overview and understanding of what my role is going to be. So then I move on to step number 4, which is going to take me around 10 minutes, which is I figure out who's going to be interviewing me, and I actually do a deep dive on who they are. So ideally, I'm going to have the names of each interviewer that's going to be interviewing me. So with a one-on-one interview, that's easy to find out who's going to be interviewing you. But if you have a panel interview, that may be a little bit harder. I'm going to check their LinkedIn profile or company page profile. Some people do have that as well. And when I'm checking their LinkedIn profiles, I'm going to be asking myself, what makes me curious about them? What questions do I want to ask them during the interview? I'm going to make sure that I don't ask them just generic ones. I'm going to dig deep into their profile, and usually I'll always find something. This is a small step that I do that is such a great value added. And it's such a big plus during the interview. It's just going to make me stand out from any of the competition that I had. Even if I can't find anything about this interviewer, if their profile is barren, if they have no presence in social media, I'm just going to ask them, how did they get this job? What do they like about their job? What's their time in the company have been? And also, what advice would they give me if I started this role? What would my first challenges be in this role? Okay, so when I'm researching the person that's going to be interviewing me, I always go on their LinkedIn profile. That's usually the most up-to-date, and it has pretty much every single bit of information that I need for me to be confident and ask some really good questions. And if they don't have their LinkedIn profile, probably they won't have any information in any of their other social media. If they understand LinkedIn, they're going to have their best achievements here. And what do they want to see? So then I go down. I see what their about page is. What are they proud of? What are they're doing? What are they focusing on? Then I'm going to go here and I'm going to do their featured section. Featured on LinkedIn is optional. And if they took the time and effort to actually put some stuff there, they're really proud of that. So I always go and check all of these links and see, can I ask them something from there? Am I interested in that? And such. And then I'm always going to go down to their experience, what their experience is, check, okay, this is what they've been doing in this company and that. And I'm definitely going to have at least 1 or 2 questions here. And with the feature section, probably 1 question. So that's already 3 questions. And possibly for the about section, I'm going to have 1 or 2 extra questions. And that's going to be 5 or 6 questions. And I'm usually not going to be asking more than 2 or 3 questions because there's going to be a whole bunch of discussion going on anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So then I go to step number 5, and this is going to be just like rereading through my CV, recapping my CV, and also looking at the notes that I just took. So these are the 5 steps that I take. And if you've been following closely, you're going to notice that I only took 1 hour and 50 minutes for all of these 5 steps. So that leaves 10 minutes left. And with these 10 minutes, what I'm going to do is for the first 5 minutes, I'm going to be just going to the bathroom, relaxing a little bit, and just clearing my mind so that I'm completely focused when the interview comes. And then the last 5 minutes that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that all of my technology works and that I'm actually in the lobby and waiting for the interviewer to start, because I do want to be waiting for the interviewer and not the other way around. That's usually just unprofessional. And now let's take a look at the notes that I actually took when I was interviewing for my role as a COO. All right, as promised. So here are the notes that I took when I was interviewing for the position of the COO. And as I said, I got the job. So full disclosure, it took me longer than 2 hours to actually make these notes, but I was preparing for a COO position. So I made sure that I wrote these down over a couple of days, pretty much. In essence, it remains the same. These notes are just going to be a little bit more detailed, a little bit more organized than what I would have normally done. Pretty much the principle and the structure for me is the same. So if you can't read my handwriting, sorry, not sorry. This is just the way I write, and this is how I've been writing for the past 37 years. So I'm not going to change that just to show you here. So I'm always going to have costs, fixed variable, and I'm just going to be writing them down. And then the revenue as well, since I was interviewing for the position of a COO, I do need to know what the revenue side is, at least somewhat. And then one of the big things was also the app that they were building. So because I actually do know quite a bit about apps, I was writing this here down and just like, hey, what is this app about? I was actually testing it a little bit and all of that. And these are pretty much just my whole notes about this. Then I went straight to the franchisee. So what are they doing with the franchisee? What are their selection? Who do they select to become their franchisee? And how do they do the onboarding? Newsflash, the way they selected the franchisee was pretty much anybody that wanted to become a franchisee became one, which is one of the reasons why they were having so many problems. Here are pretty much just overall notes about the franchisee and all of that stuff that just popped into my mind during the day or during pretty much the 2 days that I was preparing these notes. And then with the contract, how were they working with the contract, and how were they contracting with the franchisees, what clauses they had there, and all of that stuff. Like, just based on my experience, I knew that a lot of the times with the franchisees, they are not as stringent as you want people to be, or as you want the companies to be. So do they have any KPIs, OKRs, any goals that the franchisee actually needs to achieve? Otherwise, they just kick them out of the franchise. So here I was using the McDonald's example and the McDonald's franchise example as my guide point on what kind of franchisee would the company want to actually attract and how the company would position themselves towards the franchisees. So then we move on and then we look at the websites. And yeah, so pretty much I was just checking the website, making sure that I understood what was going on, any issues, any challenges that I found. And then I went on to onboarding, and onboarding came up during my interview process a lot of times. So this is why I actually had a lot of stuff here. Okay, so this part was when I got to the end of my first iteration of these notes, and I really wanted to talk about these things. So I was just writing stuff down, what I wanted to point out, what I wanted to ask. And then here are just the addendums that I thought of and I couldn't put anywhere else, or it was already too filled up. So, just my brainstorming upon how we could incorporate our services better for the customers and everything else, like hotels, airports, any deals, discounts for lounges, possibly birthdays, happy birthdays with a gift and stuff like that. And then Yeah, so then I just went a little bit into how could we expand. And the last one that I tackled was what sort of KPIs I wanted from my team, from the operations team. But yeah, overall, these are my notes that I always take. And the one thing that I do make sure when I am in the interview is that I know exactly where pretty much all of the notes are. During the interview, what I will do at times, even though I may actually know the answer or what I already want to talk about, I'm actually going to go and I'm actually going to list and say, okay, onboarding. So this is what we have. Just because I want the interviewer to see that I do have notes, that I'm using the notes. And specifically in this interview, because I had a face-to-face interview and I was on site, I had it open and I was shifting through the notebook to actually find the appropriate page, even though I knew what it said, because I wanted to see them, how much notes that I took, that I was serious. And you would be surprised, this works pretty much every single time. They're all always impressed about how many notes that I have. And if you stuck with me for this long, you're definitely going to like this video over here.